Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. You already know the drill, and if you don't know who I am, my name is Elia Vanessa Santiago Aguilar, or you can call me EVSA. Now this review was long overdue. But on the bright side, anyone who voted in my first ever poll on the channel really wanted to see this. And hopefully they've already seen the movie, right? Right? I mean, if you haven't already, you can easily go rent it or buy it on Amazon. Definitely not a sponsor. Or even buy it on DVD come February 17th, I believe. So no excuses. Go and watch it if you haven't. Unless you're not a hardcore fan, because this is exactly what the movie was made for. For the fans! But before I get too far into this, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe so that way you can get more videos from yours truly. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. The Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie was a movie that everyone was excited to see, or even judge, especially after the great success of the first movie that came out years before. From Jim Henson's Creature Shop, who have famous projects like The Dark Crystal, every Muppets movie you've ever seen, and a fan favorite The Labyrinth featuring David Bowie, who helped create the animatronics, to the Scream icon himself, Matthew Lillard, being the big bad for this franchise. We nerds of the arts, horrors, and games were super excited to see that this movie was finally being picked up. We, of course, being the fans. Now, I know I keep referring to the fans because, let's be honest, I'm one of the fans. But for those who don't know anything about this spooky franchise or the people that brought it together, let me go ahead and give you a little insight, but not too much, so that way if you want to delve into it yourself, you are welcome to. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, otherwise known as FNAF, was created by an American video game developer named Scott Cawthon. Now keep this name in mind because he will come back eventually. FNAF happened to be his twisted rendition of his first game, Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. Hopefully I got that correct. Receiving negative reviews saying that the characters looked way too scary. Who knew that FNAF would have gotten so much success because he leaned into the criticism of people saying that, oh, these characters look like creepy Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. Don't read too much into that, that's a whole nother story. But back to Freddy's. FNAF has been around long enough to celebrate its 10th year anniversary in 2024, and it's still going on strong. Whether you were here for the OG games that came out in the early to mid 2010s, or the Steel Wool productions that came out early in this decade, this franchise was bound to get a live adaptation sooner or later, right? I mean, no shade, but that's all that the industry is pushing out now these days. So this movie franchise, however, had already been in talks before this big remake live action movement. As a matter of fact, first teasers of this development in the works happened to be in 2015 by none other than Warner Bros. Pictures. But then it got pushed back until Blumhouse acquired it in 2017. A new problem arose, however. Who was going to direct this film? From going back and forth consistently, there was almost no movie until Emma Tammy stepped in, calling her people, making the dream come true, and pushing the movie out on October 27th, 2023. This was a little bit of a surprise, however, considering that they were also going to be streaming it on Peacock? Yeah, I myself had no idea how this was going to pan out, being that the theaters were already losing revenue because of the 2020 pandemic and no one wanting to leave their house. Even after a few years, people weren't ready to face the outside world yet. So maybe it was a good plan? I mean, clearly it was, considering that now we've gotten the second movie and the third movie is already on its way. Now, with the second movie, it had a lot of mixed reviews. I'll try my best to not be biased and weigh the pros and cons, but please, bear with me. I've been with this franchise since, well, day one. Either way, the reviews for this movie were significantly lower than what the first movie came to be. Well, kind of. But audiences were raving about this movie being a either claustrophobic cluster of disasters or an amazing piece of work for family and children of all ages. Now, I don't agree with the all ages, but I can agree with the team calling it a love letter to the fans, because that's exactly what this movie's co-director wanted in the first place. Who was this mysterious co-director? Well, who better to know their own fan base than the creator himself, Scott Cawthon? Because of the lower ratings, however, was this a misfire? Now, I'm not all trying to bash Scott Cawthon in any way. Not for his video games, not for his writing, not for anything in the sort. I'm just taking it into the outsider's point of view of what they see, especially coming into this franchise, maybe even through the films. If we're talking about the games, the first game was a smash hit. Game players were playing it on YouTube. Theorists were coming out with all of the theories that they could possibly think of in this mystery of a game. And it was just a smash hit seeing this new genre of horror that we had yet to see. Now, looking into the movies, it seems that any of that lore and mystery that came with the first game didn't really cross over well into the first movie. Possibly because they thought they weren't going to be able to get a second movie, or they didn't think that they would be able to have a successful box office hit as they did in that year. But it seems that the writing was the main cause of why people didn't necessarily understand or agree that this film was a good enough franchise to follow. Without giving any spoilers, even though if you look it up now, all you're going to see is spoilers, this movie was jam-packed with lore and loopholes that either confirmed or broke any of the theories that we as a fandom had thought for years. This movie, dare I say, went even harder with the lore and mixing of the games than the first. I believe as a fan, you will quite enjoy this movie. As a casual moviegoer, however, possibly not, especially if you haven't seen the first movie. Now I know, am I really saying this when it should be common sense? Yes, because without fully calling out this one critic, their takeaway was, it's not strong enough to be a standalone movie. Well, no, Sherlock. This is why it's Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Excuse me, getting a little passionate there. Not trying to be biased, but if you really do look into the reviews on, say, Rotten Tomatoes, it can really trigger a lot of hardcore fans. Some reviews are overexerted hatred from those who may not even have played the games before. Other reviews praise it for its lore and all the Easter eggs that are littered within the film. The reviews I've taken note of are the ones that don't resort to immediate profanity and actually take time to state their likes or dislikes and explain why. For example, one of the review's synopsis reads, Five Nights at Freddy's 2025, the sequel film adaptation of the pandemic popular video game that expanded into a multimedia franchise, feels like a filler movie to set up the third film, but ardent fans probably won't care. By Sarah G. Vincent News. Which I can agree with. I can agree that FNAF is a huge cash cow and can absolutely break more than even just based on its following. Another reads, Five Nights at Freddy's movies are about being down in every sense with kids who aren't alright, haunted by nightmares or malfeasance? Malfeasance? Hold on. Malfeasance. Okay. By malfeasance, of malfeasance by my goodness, that just tripping me up. Haunted by nightmares of malfeasance by previous generations. Resonates because it reflects our awareness of abuses, which are, so far, unresolved in our culture. And that's why these movies are critic-proof. Zeitgeisty Hits by Eddie Harrison at film-authority.com. On the other end, Sergio Burstein at Los Angeles Times wrote, the main problem with FNAF 2 is the insistence on maintaining the PG-13 rating when the scenes of violence, healthily increased in this installment, cry out for the use of gore that is completely absent. This brings more of a point that fans and audiences alike wanted more. This brings more of a point where fans wanted to see more. More blood, more gore, more stakes raised. We definitely got some blood, but was it the right amount of more that we wanted? It almost seemed like the more that we got was lore, and unfortunately made even some of us loyal fans scratch our head. So those who come into this movie knowing nothing of the franchise and aren't really interested in learning anything about it may not enjoy this movie, just based on how many loopholes and all of its world building. Now that those are out of the way, let me go ahead and give you a little bit of my personal likes and dislikes. A big like that I have with this movie has to be the visuals. And what I mean by the visuals is the props, the scenes, the setup. It looks very well put together. It brings you into the times that they are portraying and makes you feel like you are a part of a game that really didn't have this type of scenery. As I mentioned before, Jim Henson's Creature Shop was responsible for taking care of the animatronics, making sure that they looked as best as they could, and almost replicating the game exactly. And let me just say, as an avid Jim Henson fan, to see the toy animatronics, the Wizards, and my favorite, the marionette, all come to life, oh my goodness, I was in love. Not gonna lie, I was really nervous about the voice actors that were going to be voicing the toys, especially Chica, but I feel like they all did an amazing job. Even if Megan Fox was going to be Toy Chica. Unfortunately, still, I heard Megan Fox, not necessarily Toy Chica, but she did a good job. MatPat though, oh my gosh, you couldn't even recognize him. This is not saying that he's horrible at doing what he needs to do, but it's the fact that you heard Toy Bonnie and not MatPat. Like, with Toy Chica, all I heard was Megan Fox. No shade. I promise no shade. But we all know why the team put her as Toy Chica. And if you don't, I'm not going to explain it. You just figure that out yourself. Now, as far as a dislike, unfortunately, it would have to be how some of the characters were written. And when I mean the characters, I mean our human counterparts, not necessarily the animatronics. Some choices that were made, I don't feel were the strongest. Some felt lazy or almost completely out of character. Now, this pulled me out of the story and turned on my actor's brain like, huh? Why would you do that? That's not even, what? Okay. Do we blame the actor? I don't know. Do we blame the director? I don't know. That I cannot answer. But I believe some of the scenes with our human counterparts were not as believable as they were in the first film. With all this in mind, overall, I'm probably on the edge of giving Five Nights at Freddy's 2 a 7 out of 10. Now, I don't want no smoke. Trust me, I am a hardcore FNAF fan. But that is the thing. If I were to have done this video right after I watched the movie the first time, it would have probably been rated higher because I would have been so in that moment of, oh my gosh, there was this and there was this, and not necessarily thinking of every single thing that makes a movie great. This movie, unfortunately, won't be in my top 5. Again, no pun intended, but I can definitely say it is a real thrill to watch. Either way, thank you guys so much for watching my long-awaited FNAF review. I know this is something 73% of you wanted, so I hope I delivered. Remember, this is all just my opinion, and you may want to find out for yourself on why did I think this, or I'm totally wrong and I want to find out more. If you do, be sure to come back after and let me know what you thought. If you've already seen it, let me know down in the comments what you think about the movie, about the franchise, or even about what I said. Maybe I'm still blindsided and don't see this big picture or this one. So let me know down in the comments what you think. Don't forget to also like, share, and subscribe so that way you can get more updates on other projects that I will have in the future. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next adventure.